Welcome to Psychology Today. I'm your host, Ann Morrow, and this is a show about bicycling in general and specifically about bicycle safety. I want to thank our volunteers in the control booth who make this show possible, and Northwest Bicycle Safety Council who produces Psychology Today. And we here at Psychology Today just want to promote safe cycling and fun cycling and share our passion with you. And so I hope that you'll come out and join us on the road. And thank you too, viewers, for joining us. Registration is now open for Beaverton Banks and Beyond Bicycle Tour. And we have great new jerseys this year. As you can see on the screen, they're really classic red, black, and white jerseys. And you can order those as well as you register for the ride. The ride is August 15th, so get registered now and order one of those jerseys. I'm sure you'll get a lot of compliments anytime you wear it this summer. Northwest Bicycle Safety Council has a calendar filled with bicycling events at the different schools in the area, and we do promote safe cycling by having bicycle fairs and helmet fittings in the local schools. And over the years since 1996, we have donated approximately 13,000 helmets to benefit mostly youngsters and make sure that their little heads are safe as they ride their bicycles. So go online to our website and look at our calendar and see when we'll be at a school near you. And I want to mention too that Northwest Bicycle Safety Council, which was initially and formerly known as the Beaverton Bicycle Safety Committee, will be 20 years old in May. So we're looking forward to celebrating that anniversary and continuing to be a part of this community. So let's get on to our show. We have two segments on Psychology Today, starting out with April Streeter and Marne Duke, and we're going to discuss women riding bikes, and we'll find out why this is even a topic of conversation and how we can help women join us in cycling around the area, and maybe we can help you. Our second segment will feature Lisa Sullivan, and she's a registered nurse and a health coach, and we're going to talk about nutrition and riding and kind of that preventative idea of doing healthy things for yourself to take care of yourself to maybe prevent disease or illness in the future. So let's get started with April and Marne, and welcome to both of you.
Thanks, Ann.
Thanks for joining us. And so I'm just going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves. April, why don't you start?
Great. My name is April, and I am a freelance writer and a yoga teacher, and I'm also an advocate for women and cycling. I run a meetup group called Women on Wheels.
Okay, yeah. Okay. And Marne?
My name's Marne Duke. I work in communications in the planning and development department at Metro.
Okay. Well, welcome to both of you, and thank you so much for joining us. Why don't you each now tell us about your own love of bicycling, how and when that began. Marne?
I'm actually a relatively new bike rider. I started riding my bike in Nashville, Tennessee about 4 years ago when I was working for the health department there, working to promote active transportation and healthy eating.
Oh, okay. And April?
Well, I have kind of a funny story about that, actually. My first serious boyfriend was a road cyclist, and he would take me out on rides in which I was completely miserable. I'd always be at least a half mile behind him and his buddies, and I'd be, my nose would be running, and I'd be hunched over the bike, and I'd be going, why am I doing this? So I pretty much stopped for my early 20s, but then I happened to marry a Swede, and he had a completely different conception of what bicycling was all about. And we moved to Sweden, and that's where I really got reacquainted with cycling at a kind of more leisurely and happy pace.
Interesting. Yeah, what a contrast you've gone through.
Completely.
Okay, and share with us, April, what kind of riding do you enjoy right now? I know you've got a family and other obligations. What do you like doing right now?
Well, I ride on the weekends, which lots of people do, so I would say that I'm a leisure rider, but I'm also a transportation cyclist because I've been for the past 9 years without a car. So I have a lifestyle in which, since I don't have a car, I use my bike for daily transportation and whatever else I need to do.
So that's a whole another topic that we could delve into.
Exactly.
And Marne, how about you? What kind of riding do you enjoy right now?
Really, the riding that I do is to and from work, and out to run errands as well. I often joke by Saturday morning when some of my road warrior friends are out doing 30-mile rides, like that's the last thing I really think of. My favorite ride is Friday after work. It's kind of the one day that I don't do single parenting and I don't have to be in a hurry, and I often will take my my usually 30 to 40 minutes to get home. On Fridays it takes me several hours. I stop lots of places along the way.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, it's my slow ride.
Yeah, how fun. Well, I like to see those differences because I think we'll get into that a little bit. So, April, why don't you tell us about your book, Women on Wheels?
Great. Yeah, so when I moved back from Sweden in 2010 and I came back to Portland, I had lived in Portland previously, but I noticed when I got back that cycling seemed so different to me than what I had experienced in Sweden. And I wondered why it felt much tenser to go out and bike. And so I started researching women and cycling, the history of women and biking. And I got so fascinated with it that I decided to write a book because I felt like some of the hurdles that women might experience to biking were definitely surmountable. And so I wanted to encourage women to find whatever biking suited their lifestyle.
Okay, and and just like you guys just talked about, it's not everything suits
Right.
us for one reason or another. And what are some of the hidden obstacles then that are keeping women from transportation cycling or from cycling at all?
I think the biggest one is fear. I think that a lot of women are afraid, at least in transportation cycling, they're afraid to be on the road with cars. And I mean, in some ways, for good reason. But if you look at the progression of Portland over the last 10 years, it's gotten safer and it's gotten easier and it's gotten a lot more fun because there's a more complete system of bike lanes. So fear is one thing, but then there's also a lot of hidden obstacles that I think women face because we take on a bigger role in some responsibilities that childcare, and especially things like doctor's appointments, for example. You know, that's one of those things that can be insurmountable if you're trying to be a commuting bicyclist. And Marnie's nodding her head because I know she's got some experience with that.
Yeah.
So those are some of the obstacles. There are others.
Yeah, I mean, definitely women take more trips than men, statistically. So to have to try to figure out how does cycling fit into that, and the commute to work is a really hard ask for, and that seems to be something that when we're asked to take up cycling or riding a bike, that's usually the first thing people talk about. And it's something at Metro that we've tried to do is to talk less about that commute to work, knowing that people have family obligations, and a lot of times people don't have the facilities at their work. I'm lucky I have a shower and a locker room at the work, and that makes all the difference in the world. I have a safe place to lock my bike up as well. Right. And those are concerns I'm sure men have as well too, but they might be even more so for a woman.
Yeah, it seems like you're right. I mean, thinking back to my own when I had young kids, how do you get the kids to daycare?
Yeah.
How do you
manage
pick
everything?
And get dinner in a timely manner after the fact. They are at Little League, all that stuff. It's much simpler when you don't have them as part of, that's definitely an obstacle. But you're saying that can be a lot of that can be overcome if you reach out for some help and look at other options.
Yes.
And don't just let it stop you dead.
And also I think it doesn't have to be it can be a gradual thing that you can do. I mean, you can decide that you're going to just use your bike that's been in the shed or the garage forever, and you're going to just do one little ride. I mean, you're going to do one grocery ride, or you're going to do one pleasure ride. And then you can move into, with the support of there's lots of support available in Portland, lots of different groups, to figure out if you want to add on more biking. Yeah. And I think that's the pleasurable way to do it. You know, that's it's supposed to be fun.
Yeah. And that's one of the advantages of engaging women around bike riding is we have an opportunity for so many trips, and where men often will take a trip to work and a trip home, women are taking 5 times as many trips as them. It's 5 more opportunities that we have to talk to them about. Sure, you might drive your car on Tuesdays where you have to get to work and you have to get home, and then you have soccer practice, but that doesn't mean that Wednesday or Thursday or any other day of the week might be a little bit slower, and that you don't have as many obligations. I think we often frame especially bicycling for transportation, as an all or nothing type of person. You're going to become a bicyclist, like it's, you know, and you're going to leave your car home. That it's okay if it's something that you do once a week or a couple times a month.
Yeah, casual is good.
Right, and just incorporating different things, like maybe you drive to where you leave your children and then ride your bike from there.
Exactly.
Or just all kinds of different scenarios to make it work some days, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's great advice. So tell me a little bit, like, Marnie, how did you gradually work into riding your bike to work, or
I
how
did,
that happen?
yeah. I mean, especially in a city like Nashville, which did not have the infrastructure, and I would often have to ride through from where I lived, where we lived, and then to my son's school. Had some pretty insurmountable hills, at least at the time. They seemed very insurmountable. And so every morning I would get up and I'd put my my bike on my bike rack and put my child in the car and drive him to his elementary school. And then I would ride the 3 miles from his elementary school to downtown, which had better infrastructure. A couple times we tried it where my son rode his bike with me, and it was probably a little bit too dangerous. We had to do a lot of sidewalk riding, and pass under some places that were inevitable, that we would get a flat tire, or and there was one intersection where we would have to pass a freeway entrance, and which I'm convinced the closer you get to the freeway, the more narrow a field of vision drivers have. So it wasn't a pleasant experience. Definitely moving to Portland and was still amazing. And I still have days where, you know, I'm sitting at an intersection and I look around and there's 10 or 15 other people riding their bikes, and I'm just like, this is crazy. You know, in Nashville, we used to wave at all the other commuters. I think we knew them all by name. But
what was your mentality at that point that kept you going in Nashville? What was your thought process?
You know, some of it was some good incentives. I didn't have free parking. It's also an incentive that I have at my workplace as well. And if I wanted to pay $6 a day, that's fine. But if not, then I needed to find another way to get to work. Also, the public transportation, which is in some ways, sometimes you can get a subsidy through your work to do that. But at both locations, I had transfers, and it really just got me at home too late. You know, if I was getting home after 6, while if I was taking a bus, but I could be home by 5:30 if I was riding my bike.
Plus, you got your exercise.
Plus, I got my exercise, and I knew that it's good for me.
Yeah. I know a lot of people talk about that transition, going both directions, about the bicycling, how much better they feel as compared to sitting in a car.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting angry.
It's a good way to clear your head in the morning, I think, if you can swing it.
Yeah.
If you can find a way to make it fit.
And April, how about you? Did you at some point have kind of obstacles or things that we just talked about that you kind of had to overcome?
Well, I mean, trying to take a child to school was an obstacle. And I was, at first it was a little scary because in those days, the only thing that was available was a trailer to the back of the bike.
Right.
And, you know, then you're separated from your child by a few feet, and that can feel scary. But I had the incentive that I didn't have the car, and I preferred the bike over the bus. I think that's a strong one for me, is that the bike feels that I manage my time and I have more freedom. So that was the incentive to keep going. And, you know, equipment has improved vastly. I think that's a big point for people who are starting out now, is that there is, if you can find supports, there's so much more great family biking equipment. Just so many different ways to go.
Why, we happen to have a family bike guide that we did in partnership with the city of Portland, and this is for the entire region, and there's a nice biking through the different ages, so from the time when they're a toddler all the way up into elementary school years.
And we have had guests on that put their child in a car seat in the trailer is one option. But you're right. So if you were tackling this now with all the new and improved stuff, What would you use perhaps instead of a trailer? What?
I would use a cargo bike, definitely.
Okay.
And I do have a cargo bike now, and I use it for my goddaughter, actually, and for our dog. So we've graduated to the kids have their own bikes,
Yeah.
but we use a cargo bike, and I would definitely recommend it because there's a lot of different options and a lot of ways to go and a lot of ways to carry more than one child. Which is, you know, most people tend to have more than one kid, or they've got stuff and groceries. And so Marnie and I were talking about it on the way over because she's also thinking about a cargo bike. So it would definitely be a cargo bike, and I would go to a family-friendly bike shop to get advice. And then I would try out a few things. But cargo bike would be the top of my list for what I would want to have as equipment.
And did you find that those in Sweden too when you went over there?
You know, not as much.
Okay.
Denmark seems to be the cargo bike capital of the
okay.
world, and Amsterdam as well. In Sweden, it's a little bit less, but their technology for child seats and stuff is fabulous. So, but yeah, Denmark is the cargo bike nation, I think we could say.
So are we seeing any shift from the ratio of 3 males to 1 female cyclist?
We're not yet, but I do have a theory about it, and I
Okay.
don't know, maybe Marnie has a theory about it too. And I think one of the reasons that in the bike counts that we don't see those numbers quite shifting yet is because we're counting commuters. We're basically counting commuters, and we're counting them in the morning and we're counting them in the evening. And I think there's a sweet spot. It's the 10 o'clock sweet spot. And that's when I think a lot more women, 9 a.m. they're dropping kids off at school and they're out and maybe they go to yoga or they go and do something. So at 10 o'clock, if you happen to take your bike out in inner city Portland, you'll see quite a high number of women. And I think we're just not, that's my personal theory, but I think we're just not capturing what's happening in increased women's riders yet because we are counting commuters. What do you say, Marnie?
I agree wholeheartedly with it. Yeah, that for years, we get information from the American Census data or from local counts, but there is definitely a movement to count other things and count those discretionary trips when we're talking to people about things beyond just what is your commute to work. And there has actually been a shift. From the number of people riding their bike has plateaued in the region,
Right.
but there has been close to a 5% increase proportionally within those number of cyclists to be more women.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that is great.
Yeah, so we do have, we have close to a 5% shift, and we hope to keep those numbers. So while the numbers of actual people riding their bikes has stayed the same, that within those numbers, the number of women have increased proportionally.
And I think that's a really good point, too. We've been talking about hurdles. I think that a lot of women are or start out being fair weather cyclists. So in a city like Portland, they feel like, okay, well, it rains so much here. Why should I develop a cycling habit? Because I really don't want to be out in the rain. And I try and encourage women that then don't. If you don't want to be out in the rain, don't do it. But still develop your cycling habit for other times when it's either not raining or you've got good rain gear. You can find a way to make it work. So that is one of the hurdles that people need to find a way around.
Yeah, I have a friend that in road riding, she's very much fair weather. If it's raining, I know she's not going to come, but she commutes to work every day. Unless it's icy, she rides. And I think part of it, too, is accumulating that gear.
Yes, it is.
Like you said earlier,
Getting the good
it's little
gear.
baby steps.
Right.
And that stuff is expensive, and you gather it and little by little.
You find what works.
Yeah, and then you're good to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
That's part of it, I think.
And I think within the planning world, too, and these are more long-term things that we do with the way that we build our cities, is that there's a recognition that not everybody likes the same infrastructure, that, that women much more prefer to have a separated bike lane. Then, not everyone will want to, male or female, want to, ride down an arterial road that has a bike lane where there's cars next to you going 40 miles an hour. That's really scary. That took me years to get used to, and even still, I'm always can be farthest away from it. But that we need to build not just bike infrastructure, but different types of bike infrastructure, so that someone who's young or old or male or female, regardless of what they're comfortable with, that they can find a way to get there.
And I think that would be one of the factors, like you had said earlier, that makes cycling in Sweden or wherever less stressful,
Yes.
less tense, because there is that separation.
Yes, it's definitely true. And it's also an attitude thing. I mean, in Sweden they do have this zero fatality policy, that they're trying to have 0 road deaths. And that's, as an idea, that's starting to spread to the U.S. as well, that if we take a goal like that, a huge goal, then it can shift our perception of what safe is and how we want to protect the most vulnerable users, which are not only the cyclists, but also the pedestrians.
Sure.
So, yeah, I think there's an attitude, part of it is attitude.
Yeah. I didn't know that. Now, Marnie, you said you worked at Metro. What is Metro?
Metro is our regional government. We're the country's only elected regional government, and we manage things that are regional in nature, such as our parks and natural areas and trails, some of our venues like the zoo or our convention center. Also, our recycling and waste stream, our solid waste system, as well as we act as our metropolitan planning organization, that we do long-term planning and coordinate how we build our transportation system in our region.
And thus, bicycling comes into play.
Yes, exactly.
And how does cycling fit into Metro's vision?
I think cycling, as well as public transportation and walking for transportation, it's part of a balanced transportation system that doesn't have one way of getting there, say your car, have do undue stress to the rest of the system. It makes it work all more efficiently. And really we see ourselves as filling a demand that we see out there, that people want to do things besides be in their car. They want to experience their communities in a different way, and they want to spend more time with their friends and family, and not be stuck in traffic. So we're helping to fill that demand of other ways of getting around.
Because I think some of it is how. How do I? You're sitting in your car. How do I? How do I get out of my car?
Get out of my car. One step at a time.
Yes. What are some of the conversations at Metro about regarding women and the obstacles that they face?
I think we just, in our planning, we try to recognize that everyone's going to use this system differently, and whether it's a woman or someone who's a non-native English speaker or someone who's low income or who has a disability, that we all have different needs from the transportation system and different ways to use it. Like we mentioned earlier, women make many more trips than men do, and we need to go to a variety of different places. And so we need to recognize that that there's not one way of how people want to get from one place to another. Also, we want to normalize it and show people how convenient it can be, and practical. That that when you wake up in the morning, and if you have a really busy day, that might be the day that you're going to drive your car and get everybody where they need to go. But that the next day you might want to take the bus, and just really freeing people, from that one way of traveling, and also seeing that women have different safety concerns, and especially if they're traveling with children.
Now, in the past, I've heard that if you make the streets safe, that a woman feels that she's safe on them, everybody will ride. Is that still kind of the philosophy, or have you broken away from that?
I think it's maybe even gone to some people. I think Roger Geller at the City of Portland has referred to it as an 8-year-old young girl. Like if she can get around in the transportation system. But women are definitely seen as kind of an indicator species of how well a place is doing to advocate and promote bicycling. Is if you see a large number of women, and for better or worse, we're seen within the human race as making safer choices, that men are traditionally the risk takers. And when people see women doing an activity, they will naturally see it as something that's safe and normal.
Interesting.
I know.
So let's talk about women on wheels and girls on bikes. What was the what was the impetus or the motivation for you to start this idea?
Well, after I finished writing the book and published it, I felt like I needed to put my money where my mouth was. Well, and that I needed to put into practice what I had been talking about in the book, basically. And it seemed to me that one of the key things that women needed were more supports, different kinds of support groups. And it's wonderful that now, in the last 4 years since that time, that really has happened. So I wanted to have a group that was focused on transportation biking, but that felt like a welcoming place where you could work out all of those little blocks in the road toward biking. And that's where I formed the meetup group, basically. And we ride all year round, so there's an opportunity to kind of meet people and find buddies in a sense too, because I think that's important. I mean, one of the things that we didn't talk about, but that I think can really facilitate having fun with cycling is not necessarily having to depend on your partner to be the one to be kind of guiding you through. If you have a little bit of a wider group of support, it can be really crucial to solve some of the issues that can come up. So that was why I did it, because I wanted to have to be there for other women.
And I think that is important. I know I talk to cyclists too, and the internet is great, and emailing one another is great.
Yeah.
But having conversations and asking those questions, and then a secondary question,
Exactly.
I mean, it's so much more helpful, I think.
It is.
So having a group, you're right, where those conversations can take place really helps people move down the road,
It does.
Literally and figuratively.
Exactly. Getting it down the road.
And Marne, how about you? What's your interest in women on wheels and girls on bikes?
Well, first off, I had moved to Portland and I was new, and I wanted to meet people, so I went to the meetup and I met April there, and it was a great way for me to learn how to ride to different parts of the city, or to different parts of the region, and see what was out there on some of the really long rides. From a metro perspective, we want to work with different community groups and local and governments to help promote cycling for women, and so we're excited to sponsor this year's Cyclo-Femme ride.
Good. And let's talk about Cyclo-Femme.
Yes.
And that's happening on May 10th, 2015, which happens to be Mother's Day.
It does.
And it's the first Sunday Parkways of the
It
year.
is.
All good, exciting things going on. So I know in your publicity, one objective is to create a unified voice for women in cycling. So tell us what Cyclo-Femme is all about.
So Cyclo-Femme started 4 years ago, and it was an idea, the brainchild of a woman named Sarai Snyder, and she's a cycling advocate in Colorado. And what she wanted was a way to not prescribe what type of rides that women would do, but to have a day that felt like, okay, this is the day that you can do whatever it is, from mountain biking to a little ride around town, and we're all doing it together. So she decided that Mother's Day was a great day to do that, and it's grown from there. And she's now got thousands of different people around the world actually do a ride on that date.
Wow.
So, yeah. So we're going to do our 4th annual ride. This is our 4th ride of Cyclo-Femme.
Very exciting.
It is.
And you guys you've really put your money where your mouth is.
Definitely.
So we've got about 5 minutes left. April, you recently wrote a blog about 5 bike trends to make you a happier cyclist. What are some of those trends?
Well, let's see. Okay, the trends that are happening are reflectivity is getting a lot better. And I think that, sometimes people think that you have to be kind of blinged out, and it's true. The more lighting that you have is definitely better. And reflective gear is getting better. Gear for women, technically savvy clothing that can help you have fun while riding is great. For example, Levi's, after many years, finally came out with their commuter jeans. They're a little bit stretchier, they're a little bit higher, they're still stylish, and they are supposedly will hold up well. So it's things like that in clothing that make it more fun to be a transportation cyclist, for sure. Other things that are happening in biking, trends, helmets are getting prettier, I would have to say.
And fun and more personality.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Lots more choices, better fit, and looking good for commuters. They're not, there's been that whole trend of at the same time that racing cyclists get stranger looking, helmets get stranger looking. On the other side, we're getting helmets that look a bit less strange, I could say, and more fun. So those are some of the things that are happening out there that are, and bikes are, I mean, we did talk about that a little bit, but just the gear that's available that can be particularly suited for your type of riding are getting, there's a lot more bikes for women. You know, it used to be that if you were under 5 feet, you had a very difficult time finding a bicycle. And now, and in Portland, we've got lots more choices.
Yes.
And that's so fabulous.
It really is.
So you can find a bike that will suit you.
And I think that they're more widely available as well, too.
Yes.
When I think about, like, when I first bought my commute bike and what I bought.
Yeah.
But it was, you know, it was 5 years ago in Nashville, Tennessee. But even on a recent visit, though, I went to a bike store there, and their variety of bikes that they have are much more compatible. You know, that there wasn't like you can get a city cruiser, or you can get like
a road bike,
you know, a $4,000 road bike, and those were your choices.
Yeah. So that is great. And speaking of that, and just kind of briefly, there are a lot of genres of cycling, and like you're talking about in Cyclofem. How do we encourage women to find where they feel like they fit, and yet encourage them not to limit themselves?
Yeah. Well, I think, so coming to this event, the Cyclofem event, is a good way to do that, because there will be a lot of the groups will be there. I think you have to test things out a little bit. Now in Portland, we've got everything for that at women supportive groups for road biking, for beginners, absolute beginners, for people who want to do transport, for people who want to do recreation. So you got to try things out and see what you like, and start to be part of this community of bicyclists, because then you'll also find more things that are attractive to you, more types of rides that you want to go on, and you'll be a little more clued into what's happening and what's going on, and then you can pick and choose, because we've just got a great variety of different opportunities for women in Portland.
Well, and like you were saying too, I think you get to in a group and somebody has their cargo bike there, and maybe you can take it for a little spin and get, is this going to work for me? Or maybe somebody has a low tricycle type bike.
Yes.
Might that be something for me? You can kind of share with each other and get the pros and cons from not the salesperson, but somebody else. Well,
testing it on the road.
You guys have been great encouragement, and I hope that people come away with ideas about how to take baby steps to getting on that bicycle and using it. So thank you both, Marnie and April, for joining me.
Thanks.
And we're going to go to a video, and we'll come back with our next guest. Let's watch a bicycle safety video.
Bike safe, bike smart. Hi, my name is Xander.
And my name's Elizabeth.
Over the next few minutes, we're going to have some fun and talk about some pretty important stuff.
Some of it you've heard before, but it never hurts to hear it again.
And again.
And again. So here we go. Did you know that just falling off your bike is enough to get a serious brain injury? So play it safe. Wear your helmet every time you ride. It can reduce the risk of head injury by up to 85%.
And that's a lot. The helmet should be snug on your head and sit flat. The strap should form a V under your ear, and the chin strap should also be snug. 2 fingers should fit in between your eyebrow and your helmet.
Also, make sure your helmet meets safety standards. Look for a sticker that says CPSC. This stands for the Consumer Product Safety Commission.
All the stuff we talked about today is common sense.
But you still need to think. Be courteous, and be predictable by always riding in a straight line.
Wear a helmet. And follow the rules of the road. Ride with traffic on the right side of the road. Ride single file.
Obey traffic lights and traffic signs. Check behind you before turning. Use proper hand signals.
Stop, look left, right, then left again before entering a street. And use caution at an intersection.
Make eye contact with other drivers. Be careful around parked cars and watch for objects in your path.
And at night, be seen to be safe.
Never assume that motorists or pedestrians will see you. Remember, bikes are smaller than cars, and if there's a crash between the two, any guesses who will win?
That's all the time we have. So remember these 4 words. Bike safe, bike smart.
Well, that's certainly something that Northwest Bicycle Safety Council believes in. Bike safe and bike smart. And that was some good advice in that video. And we're back now with Psychology Today, and we've got our guest, Lisa Sullivan, with us. She's a registered nurse and also a certified health coach. So we're going to take a little different tack now and talk about bicycling as something that you might do for your health and the nutrition aspects of it. And so I hope that you come away with something with our second segment here. So welcome, Lisa, and thank you for joining us on Psychology Today.
Thank you, Anne.
And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, Anne, I've been a registered nurse now for the last 26 years. I've worked mostly pediatrics, different hospitals, as well as some adult cardiology areas. And in the last 2 years, I went back to school and became a certified health coach so that I could become a little more independent with teaching people the preventative aspects of health. And it's been really fun. I started my own business about a year ago, and it's called Catch Wellness. And it's been fun doing some one-on-one client coaching for health promotion. And so I'm still working about 30 hours a week at the hospital, and then I'm starting this business to really help on the preventative side of
Good for you.
prevention.
That certainly sounds necessary. What kind of bicycling do you enjoy?
I started out riding my road bike. I've lived in the Bethany area for the last 20 years, so I've been very fortunate to be able to ride in the West Hills, and there's so many rural areas. So I just started to get to know people in Portland. I joined one of the Portland Velo groups here and met a bunch of people. And then it turned into a sport of triathlon. I'm a triathlete as well.
Okay.
And that became another social event. I tend to really like to ride with people, and it's a camaraderie thing. So even though I do race as a triathlete, I enjoy the social aspects of it. So that's really where my love is now, is I use cycling in the sport of triathlon. And I also ride casually on the weekends.
Ambitious. And what's your favorite ride right now then?
Oh, it's the ride I just did last weekend, and it's in this area in the West Hills. I call it the Cedar Canyon route. I don't know if that's the real name of it, but it's actually out towards Roy area and Banks, and then there's this beautiful canyon that's called Cedar Canyon Road, and it takes you just kind of rolling hills, and it's just very beautiful. And it's a nice loop, so that's my favorite ride right now.
And we are lucky to have favorite rides right in our backyard.
Absolutely.
Instead of having to drive forever to them. So listening to our first guest, were there any obstacles to you to getting into cycling?
Yes, the fear factor. I mean, it's scary to get out there on the road with cars, and even though we live in the rural areas, there's cars everywhere and big trucks that go by. I started cycling, doing mountain biking when I lived in San Diego. Nothing dangerous, but I was off-road. And coming here, it became more of a road cycling event just by people I met. And so it was just scary getting out there on my own. Also, being a woman, if you wanted to ride on your own, I always would think, well, you know, I know how to change a flat, but what if I get too far out? And you know, I guess I could call someone, but it crosses your mind more. So cycling in pairs or with groups gives you a little bit of that comfort.
That's true.
So I've really learned I go out on my own sometimes, but I really enjoy being with people. So it's a real social event.
I'd say I kind of feel the same way. So how has being a registered nurse impacted your identity as a cyclist? Do you feel like maybe you're a safer cyclist, or you're more conscientious about, I mean, you're pediatrics, but yet you know what happens to people when they get hurt.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I started as an ICU nurse, so you're always thinking worst case scenario. That's just what you have to think about when you're caring for people that are critically ill, children or adults. And so when you're cycling, you always are, you don't think about that all the time, but you really are thinking about preventing that kind of crashes or what ifs kind of thing. So that's always on my mind. And I've been with people who have had some pretty bad crashes and have had to call the ambulance, you know, especially in group rides.
Sure.
So I think just being smart about it, going out in not high traffic areas, traffic time periods, I think ahead, wearing my road ID so that, you know, if something were to happen and I was on my own, I would have that backup. Of course, always wearing a helmet and you know, encouraging others to wear a helmet. Most people do now, but with children, you know, you see them in the neighborhoods sometimes and they're still out without the helmet, and that's, you know, I can't keep my mouth shut. I have to say something because it is dangerous. So it is a big safety thing, but it's also a really health promotional thing for me. I started riding for the health of it, and it's just a great way to stay fit.
It is, mentally and physically.
Mentally and physically, and more so now I'm finding it mentally. You know, getting out and enjoying the beauty. And kind of being able to unload the day or the week.
Right, right.
So it's really impacted me more mentally. Just noticed it in the last few years.
Interesting. Yeah, kind of like yoga.
Yes, same thing.
So certainly as a health coach, you would best work with somebody one-on-one because we're all a little different and have strengths and weaknesses that are different. But just generally, I kind of want to talk about the health aspect of not just the bicycling itself, but the nutrition part of it a little bit, I think, because it does enter in various ways to be healthy and to be able to ride your bike effectively. So for those of us that are recreational riders, what kinds of foods should we consider for fuel? We have to think about fuel for our body.
Absolutely. And I think thinking of it not just for the ride, but leading up to the ride is important, you know, especially if we're going out for a long time. If we are riding for longer distance, we do have to think about it a little bit more. What could be good fuel before you even get on your bike that morning? And, you know, carbohydrates are the true fuel. It's kind of like putting gas in your car. It's what gives you the energy. So getting good carbs, and good carbs, I know it's hard. What is a good carb? And I think of it as things that are really nutrient dense. You know, you have your oatmeal and your fruits and your vegetables and things like that. So getting a really good breakfast to even start your ride is very important. Giving yourself a good hour to really take in some calories. You'll know that you'll have a good hour on the bike, that you don't have to really be concerned with eating the whole time, but definitely drinking water and such.
Yes.
So I think it's leading up to the bike rides as well, and then everybody's different. I've tested this myself, you know, whether you're going out for a 30-minute ride, an hour, or, you know, it could be an all-day century is going to change that. And everybody's different, but truly being able to have those carbohydrates to manage you throughout the ride is important. And everybody has a different maybe liquid type of drink that they put in their bottle, and those vary all through the market, around the market. I use just a typical carbohydrate powder myself, but also thinking about real whole foods. If you're just riding, like as a triathlete, I have to do more liquid fuel because I have to get off and run.
Oh, sure.
But as a cyclist, I try to think of more whole foods. You know, there's creative ways of bringing, instead of some of the packaged foods, you can bring dates. That's a carbohydrate, but it has a lot of fiber, and it'll fuel you longer and make you full. So there's different. Everybody's a little different, but I really think it's important to test it out, see how your body assimilates it and digests it. And kind of practicing that, especially if you're going out for a long day.
I think that's good advice, as maybe you've set a goal for a longer ride and experiment as you, not just with your cycling, trying to work on your cycling, but your diet, like you're saying.
Absolutely.
And I think not only are we different as individuals and what works for each of us, But on any given day, sometimes my body is a little different.
Oh, yes.
That is, the same breakfast that worked this morning doesn't make it one other day, and so I need some backup along with me to supplement that. And why that is, I don't know. It's kind of goofy, but you just have to always be prepared.
Right, absolutely, I agree with you. And you learn, and you kind of, you tuck that in your memory bank and say, well, I was really hungry on that ride. I should always bring maybe an extra bar or some extra dates or something that tastes good to you in case, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't want to be under-fueled.
No, because that'll put you on the side of the
That'll
road
put you on the
faster
side of
than
the
a
road.
flat tire.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's experimentation with what drinks work for you and what foods and what doesn't work for you. So that's really good advice. So it's talking about more extreme riding, I kind of came up with the idea, if you were going to do a really long bicycle ride, like Seattle to Portland is a classic each summer. So it's 200 miles from Seattle to Portland, and some people do it in 2 days, so kind of do 2 back-to-back centuries, and some people do it in 1 day, so it's 204 miles in 1 day. So thinking about such an extreme ride, even before, like the Friday before the ride, it seems you'd have to be thinking way ahead about drinking and eating and leading up to something like that. What would your thoughts be on the nutrition for something like that?
Yeah, leading up to an endurance ride is important because no matter how good your fuel is that day, if you've really underfueled and eaten foods that don't nourish you, you're going to notice it on that ride. And I've done it. I think we all have. You need to really start thinking of it as you're training for the event. As you're training for the event a month before, as you start to lead up to that, you want to make sure that you're consistent with your breakfast, lunch, and dinners and not skipping meals. That's truly important. And really eating, I use the word nutrient-dense foods for a reason because those are what really give you the vitamins and minerals that will help you recover as well between your meals and in your rides, etc. So those are things like fruits and vegetables, getting a lot of those throughout the day, your good healthy proteins, lean proteins, and getting a balance of that throughout your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And again, everybody's different on how they do that, but thinking about that weeks before leading up to that type of endurance event is very important. And then hydration. We can't leave out water. You always think you're getting enough water, but hydrating well before the event is very, very important. And one of the rules that I do is I can set a timer on for a long bike ride for like every 20 minutes, and that'll remind me to take my fuel and maybe take some water as well, or alternate it. So that's during the bike ride, but leading up to it is even more essential. And I think balancing those really healthy foods along the way is going to get you fueled for that event.
Okay, good advice. Now, we kind of touched on this. Personally, if I'm going to do a 30-mile ride, which is kind of my weekend road warrior type ride,
sure,
I have to think, like you said, I have to think about what I eat for dinner and what I eat for breakfast, or I'm going to be uncomfortable on that ride. So what are your thoughts just generally? What are some of the healthy lean proteins and that sort of thing for us to eat? And you touched on oatmeal for breakfast. What might some other things be?
Some things that work for me is, sometimes oatmeal, people feel like, oh, that made me, it's filling. It has lots of fiber. It's a great carb for energy, but they think, oh, maybe I need a little bit of a healthy fat and protein to go with it. And a really good whole grain bread with a nut butter is a really good sustaining because it's a healthier fat. Or taking some avocado, it's a healthy fat, and putting that on toast with some hummus is a really good fuel before going out on a bike ride. And those can really fill you up and take you out for a good hour before you even have to start refueling. And that's kind of a rule. If I have a good hearty breakfast, I feel like I don't need to really start eating for about an hour because your body is then going to start burning that into carbohydrates. So as far as during the ride, I think it's also, again, it's everybody's preference, but it's the carbohydrates that fuel you. Those are the things that are going to get you through the ride. And if it's a little bit longer ride, the dinner before is a good, there's different good lean proteins. I tend to eat a lot of things that we forget about that have a lot of nutritional value. Our beans and legumes, I think we forget about those, and we can always put those over a salad during the day to add some more protein too. Things that we forget about. A lot of lean, fish, people really enjoy that as well. Also, just making sure you're always getting your greens and your fruits, because those are the things that are less acidic and help you recover. So you want your muscles, they're tired when you're working out hard and they need to recover. So those are more alkaline foods that really help your body recover, as well as the lean proteins. So it's balance. It's really just, I think we know what's healthy, but if we get it, we need to make sure we're getting enough of it as well and testing it.
Sounds like good advice. So most bike rides that I do are social rides, and probably you do too if you ride in a club, includes a bakery stop. And to be honest, if you do the bakery stop, you eat more calories than you are putting out on the bike ride. Pretty easily, that can happen. What's your advice for that little problem?
And it is a great thing to do because it's social and it's a reward. You think of it, so you don't want to totally give it up. But I think it's thinking of it as maybe bringing something along that you can have initially to fill you up. So it doesn't have to be maybe the full pastry and the coffee with the sugar. So you want, because it's not going to help you recover. So what I do is I will often bring a recovery shake. And it's a little smoothie or something with protein and carbohydrates that I drink right after my bike ride. It kind of fills you up, and that's the best way to get your recovery. You should get that in within 20 minutes. And then, and then you can splurge a little bit. Because you're not going to want to eat as much.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good way, is maybe thinking or bringing some, fruit cut up or a bar that you can have first. Get your body recovered with some nutrition.
Yeah.
And then, then you might say, I just need that tea today. Or splitting a pastry versus needing it every time.
Having somebody to split with helps a lot.
Exactly, because it is fun to be able to do that.
Yes.
We are burning calories, and we want to splurge sometimes. But I think that's an easy trick to bring along with you.
Now, we're kind of running out of time, but I wanted to touch on, a lot of times bicycling and the preventative end of it, a lot of times bicycling is an exercise that somebody looks at that wants to lose a little weight. And that balancing of consuming enough calories to do a bike ride and eating healthfully, sometimes it just doesn't work out so well unless you're talking about being very conscientious about it. What would you share with us about that idea?
I think the big take-home message is the type of calories. I don't think counting calories really works. We've seen that with diets, and we get consumed with it. But it's really thinking, where are my calories coming from? If I'm eating most of them from very healthy foods, fruits and vegetables, lean proteins, nuts and seeds, I will get full. Healthy fats, good green smoothies. Those are the healthy foods. And then you don't have to worry about counting the calories. I think it's really just that's the take-home message, is really focusing on that. And then you're going to get the nutrition that'll give you the fuel to be able to exercise more and recover.
Sounds like win-win.
It's a win-win.
But it takes a little thought process, just like we talked about the women learning to be able to ride their bikes and as a transportation. It's little baby steps and learning that, I think.
Absolutely. It's baby steps, and it's having the support from a friend. And we do that in baby steps as we ride. We do that with how we eat, and if we are doing it together, it becomes second nature.
Yes, and just learning from each other what works for them, what they find really tasty, different food combinations that we might never have thought about on our own.
Absolutely. Sharing a recipe or a good snack to bring along, and sharing it with somebody really helps.
It all helps. What other benefits do you see that bicycling provides for overall health? I mean, you touched on that, the mental health, the physical health. How do you see that all correlating for people?
I think it's It gives you a little bit of that balance. If you're riding with people, you get that joy of friendship or being with people. You get the joy of nature, and then you get the benefit of exercise on top of it. It's good heart health. It's great for mental health, as we said. I mean, getting out there and really experiencing the fresh air after being locked in a job all week.
Yes.
So I think it's just a multitude of good health, and you bring in that with the people you share it with as well, and you look forward to the next ride because of it.
And I think it kind of bleeds out into the rest of your life, that you have that good experience, you used your body, you rested your mind, you enjoyed nature, and it kind of, then when you go to the grocery store, you're looking for more healthful things because it all kind of ties in together.
Yes, and you might have more patience to do it because you've given yourself that time.
Right. Do you have any other further advice just for pursuing good health, just briefly?
Well, I think it's balance. You know, and I haven't always been balanced. You have to really, we have busy lives. We're working, we're parents, we're trying to exercise, and sometimes those are the things that are put on the back burner, right? Because
yeah, sadly,
it's just the way society is, and we get very, very busy. But if we can put ourselves first sometimes and give ourselves a little self-care by exercising, and it's going to help physically and mentally, and it's going to carry through our health, and it's going to prevent disease processes along the way. So it carries out throughout your life, and we see that because we see every age with cyclists. You can ride from very young to very old.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for joining us and giving us that nutrition information, because that's certainly a big part of bicycling and being healthy, and I really like that idea of the preventative part of taking care of yourself mentally and physically, and you'll be a better person for it. So
Thanks,
I encourage all of you, thank you for joining us, and I encourage you to come out and ride with us. Bruce Buffington, our producer, and I both lead bicycle rides through Portland Wheelman Touring Club, pwtc.com. So come and ride with us and get a taste of what this is all about, and we'll talk about food and beverages and how to make this work for you. And don't forget to register for Beaverton, Banks, and Beyond Bicycle Tour, and that's coming up on August 15th. So please join us. We promise to give you a great time and show you the Banks-Vernonia Linear Trail, and we'll take good care of you and feed you good, healthful foods, I promise. I wanted to mention, too, that the Banks-Vernonia Linear Trail got voted by Bicycling Magazine 10 best bike paths in the U.S., and that was their number 2, so that's great news. Thank you for joining us.